games. The elite are about their food games. Quote, "The year is 2020. Our global food system is under stress from population growth, rapid urbanization, political instability, climate change, and disease. How will the world leaders respond?" Who would know, eh? Well, I think we do all know. And this is from a little short YouTube clip, and there you see how will the world leaders respond, the United Nations logo, and I don't think it was the security room, but one of their other rooms in the background, just to let us know they've got it under control. I only just found out about all this yesterday. I was just doing a little bit of, wiggling down some rabbit holes. So I've got bits of paper everywhere. I haven't really got time to compile it properly, and I just want to whiz through it because this is important for you and it's important for me. Our government, our corrupt government, has not told us and prepared us. So this is going to be what I'm going to do today. Some of you will already know that the year 2021 that we're about to go into will be a year, or the beginning of goodness knows how many years. The elite would suggest that it could actually be a decade, but we're going to go into food shortages. And this is what these games were all about. These games, it was called the Food Chain Reaction, a global food security game, and it looked at the decade of 2020 through to 2023. This was held in November 2015 in Washington, D.C., and we know that Washington, D.C. is not owned by America. It is owned by the Vatican. It is a private bit of land inside the U.S., but not owned by the U.S., and it was held there, and it was held at the World Wildlife Fund headquarters, and we'll get onto them in a minute as well, a nice NGO, United Nations NGO. Okay, so they invited international institutions, private sector, that kind of public-private partnership to come together to play tabletop or virtual games, a little bit like they did at Event 201. You know how they reworked the whole scenario about COVID well beforehand and how it would go. But interestingly enough, at that COVID one, there was no medical experts or medical people on board. Oh, you keep them away. We just want the big corps and the governments and the NGOs and, the scientists. We just want our own little mind hive together to put out together our scenario or our Event 201 game. And here we are, 2015, doing the food virtual games. Their logo is a sort of a jigsaw puzzle. At first you wonder what it is. It's a little bit takeoff, I guess, of the United Nations. There's the world. It's sort of abstract, like a jigsaw puzzle type thing. And instead of the wreath, we've got kind of lines that run around the world, encircling the world. No doubt these games were funded from our taxes. The elite milk us dry, so it wouldn't be at all surprised. So who were the main players? Some of these people I don't even know. We had the CNA, which is Analysis and Solutions. And I notice in the A, they've got this nice little dot, which is a lovely Luciferian dot. I won't go into the meaning of that. But we know when it comes to Luciferian, there's always sexual debauchery in there. And that's what that dot is. There was also the Center for American Progress. Wow, I'm glad that someone's taking care of our progress for us and moving us forward. There was Mars, and we know that's a big company that controls the food pretty much worldwide. There was Cargill. Now, they're significant to us here in New Zealand. They're a mega company, and they started it over a couple of hundred years ago, and they've got their fingers all over basically what's called farm to fork. They're a farm to fork company. They have got the whole food situation under control, and from the farm to your table. They came to New Zealand in 2009, and they based themselves in Dunedin, but they're in Invercargill and several of the other, our bigger cities making sure they're controlling the food and the food distribution here in New Zealand. So that's very comforting to us all, of course. But let's just step back, because I said that it was at the World Wildlife Fund headquarters in Washington, D.C. They were there as well. Good to know they're looking after the wildlife. Maybe it's us, the wildlife. We'll have to see about that. Here's another quote. The stakes are clear. How will our leaders in government, business, and international aid react to this growing food security challenge? The world is looking to them for answers. Now, you may not have known that we're all looking to the elite, the expert that we've slowly been indoctrinated to believe in all around the West, that we're looking to them for the answers, because we have no idea how to look after ourselves. We're just poor little Westerners. We've totally disconnected ourselves from the land. And, you know, we just don't know what to do. We know there's a grocery store, that big supermarket, that is sucking us dry. Well, how else would we feed ourselves? We're looking to our government. We're looking to the international community. We're looking to the United Nations to save us. Well, thankfully, they've worked it all out. So, the World Wildlife Fund. It's a United Nations NGO. So I did a little bit of wiggling down that rabbit hole last night. It was founded in 1961. But more alarming, who were the founders? Well, there were quite a few, but I've picked out, what have I got? 1, 2, 3. I've picked out the four names that we will have all heard of. And the first one is Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. So we know that he is a eugenicist. We know that he said he would like to come, when he dies, he'd like to come back as a deadly virus to kill us all. So, you know, quote unquote. So, you know, we know that he's got our best interest at heart. So when we're looking to this scenario, food security games, it's nice to know we're in good hands. Another name, Julian Huxley. Well, you know, we know the Huxley guys and their tampering with science and their fingers well into eugenics and depopulation agendas going way back centuries. Julian Huxley was an atheist and evolutionist. And he, interestingly enough, he was UNESCO, United Nations Education and Cultural Organization. He was their first director. So it's all in-house, nice and incestuous. So it's good to know that, you know, they don't need to have their big meetings. It's just the one mind that can organize so many things. He said this in 1946. He talking about UNESCO, specifically UNESCO, in its educational program. It can stress the ultimate need for world political unity and, my writing, familiarize all peoples with the implications of the transfer of full sovereignty, transfer your full sovereignty from separate nations, we don't want that, into a world organization. And that's what they're all about. That's all the elites have ever been about. They don't like nationhood. They want open borders. They want to control. So that was Julian Huxley. So he was the founder also of World Wildlife Fund. He also argued that since eugenics, now listen to this, since eugenics started the environmental and the conservation movements, that the same players should be part or instrumental in the core world government. So, you know, United Nations is all about depopulation and control. So, you know, I don't think there's going to be a food security issue, is there, when we're whittled down to 500,000? Is that what the Georgia Guidestones tell us? Something like that. Okay, so that's a good, noble person to have on board. Another name, Rockefellers. Well, we know about those snake salesmen. Godfrey A. Rockefeller. Now, I couldn't really find out too much about him, except he went to Yale. Fancy that. And who did he go along with? George Bush Sr. And we know George Bush Sr. was part of the Skull and Bones secret society, Jesuit Illuminati secret society at Yale University, you know, stole Geronimo's skull and his crossbones, and do all sorts of debauched things, and head to Bohemian Grove and, you know, sacrifice care for anyone that they're in their nation, sacrifice the care to the big owl, Morlock, so that they don't have to worry about us. They don't want to care for us. Okay, these are the kind of people we put into power. So there he is. So he's there. And here we go. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, the great Nazi of the Second World War, who started Bilderbergers in the first Bilderbergers meeting in 1954 at the Bilderberger Hotel, which happened to be the last place that the Nazis won a battle during World War II. So it was significant for them to grab the West by its throat at their last place of victory during World War II. Right, so there we go, whizzing through this really fast. So who were at these, at the food chain reaction, a global food security game? Who were there? Well, they didn't worry about you and I. They didn't worry about anyone from any independent nation that's really interested in our communities. They just got all the globalists. Anyone that can sort of think we don't care about little community like my one here in Mangakino, they just flick that off the map. They want to herd us into the big cities. They just want all the globalists. So they had the economists and the policymakers, they had the Center for American Progress. Here we go. I've said the World Wildlife Fund, sustainable food groups, world scientists, academics. Wow, I'm really pleased we got them. Climate and food security organizations, economists from Cargill, you know, the company that's controlling everything food worldwide now, pretty much. Animal nutrition. So at least someone's thinking of the animals. Don't worry about us, but they're thinking about the animals. The environmentalists. And here we go, the World Bank. Nothing would be complete without the banksters. They were there as well. So what we know about these kind of people that have spent their years at Marxist education schools and gone to university and done their degrees and their masters and honors and, you know, PhDs and all the 9 yards at university, which really is Marxist finishing school. What these guys do is they learn more and more about less and less. So these guys would be able to talk about, you know, a hair, and probably spend a week pulling ideas about what a hair from our head has to do with us and a life as we know it. So, you know, we're not going to have very many good outcomes there. So needless to say, they didn't think like you and I, start a veggie garden. When we first went to the UK in 2016, the first thing I did is I started a victory garden. Our little back garden, it's just a little courtyard, a little courtyard. So I pulled out all the shrubs and I've put in apples and pears and blackberries and cherry trees in a tiny courtyard, grapevines, roses for my rose hips, a little veggie garden. You know, there was one there. It was small, but enough. What else? Anyway, I can't quite remember now. We've been back here too many years, but I had 11 different fruit trees in my tiny little courtyard, a victory garden. In World War I, World War II, the government knew there was going to be a food crisis. So they said, hey, people, get there, get your victory gardens going, get yourself some chooks, get yourself some rabbits, get yourself a little veggie plot, put in some trees, work together in your neighborhood. We can do this. Now, I think these games that they had in 2015 that could have been over in 5 minutes, just put in a victory garden. Nope. Instead, they said we need strong corporations. They said we need international cooperation. And they talked about together. We can do this together. So just like the COVID scam, we can do this together. Right. So how do we know there is going to be a food crisis? Well, we know the elites are wanting to fundamentally transform our food. We know that they want us to eat bugs and synthetic foods, man-made meats, anything except the way we traditionally have been eating and feeding ourselves. The way we traditionally eat and feed ourselves, of course, has made us robust over the decades. Now we're eating rubbish processed Rockefeller food from your local supermarket. We are starting to have more medical problems and vaccines to boot. Right. So we know there's a soy shortage through the world. China is buying up everything they possibly can. Brazil is starting to import GMO soy from America because their organic soy has been shipped off and sold overseas. Russia, same with Russia. Russia's trying to curb the export of wheat and that type of thing to greedy China by putting taxes and tariffs on exported food. I mean, China doesn't care. I think China doesn't care even for its own people. I think what they're wanting to do is prove to the world again, just like Corona. Oh, we're so cool. We've got it all together. And the UN carries on with the narrative and the rhetoric and says, oh, yeah, they're so cool. They want China to be the wonderful model of how the big corps and big government and little people are well fed. So it's just a big propaganda exercise for them. Yeah, they'll feed their people, but that's not the point. 2017, there were headlines like this. What if several of the world's biggest food crops failed at the same time? So here's the elite just putting it out there. Remember, they can manipulate the weather now. You can get the document Controlling the Weather 2025 PDF. You can go to my website, AntoinetteJames.com, and get it there through The World We Live In, or you'll be able to just Google it and get it. Another headline, could frozen food transmit COVID-19? Here's what you need to know. Viruses don't transmit that way, but they will bluff us and fool us till the cows come home. So that's telling us there's a soy shortage. They're going to start making frozen food shortages. They're telling us that animals are filthy and raw milk will give you Campylobacter, and don't worry that we're killing you with toxins in your supermarket, killing you, but a little diarrhea, we can't have that. So we're being pushed away from our land. We're being pushed away from animals to put into the sterile sort of environment. So instead of our government saying, wow, we could actually really help the world by taking regulations off our farmers, getting people into their victory gardens, giving people the tools to be able to fertilize their land appropriately, putting out educational programs instead of the absolute indoctrination rubbish that's on television. They could do that, and New Zealand could be what it really used to be, and kind of is struggling to be now, is a really great food basket for us and plenty to send overseas. But our government instead, no, we're just going to poison the land with 1080. We don't want our people to be self-sufficient. We've got to kill and destroy farming. We don't want our people being self-sufficient. We're going to come together with the food games and have strong corporations and cooperation, and together we're going to starve. That's the bottom line. But our fixated comrade Ardern, she is going to double down with her globalist masters and destroy us. She's already done that through COVID, and she'll carry on destroying us through 2021 so that we can be a crippled nation, a hand-to-mouth nation like the rest of the world potentially will be. Now, okay. So we know there's a Maunder minimum. We know the sun actually dictates our cooling and heating in the earth. We are going into a cooling phase because the sun is resting. So it will cool, crops will change. We need to understand that. We know, so that will impact upon our food supply in New Zealand because our government isn't preparing us. COVID shutdowns, suddenly the meat factories had COVID, and suddenly the fishery workers had COVID. It's all ways of shutting down those industries, those primary industries with false positives. We know they're being geoengineering the skies. Last year it was fairly bad. This year they just won't stop. So we're getting a lot of cooling, fluctuating temperature down here in the South Waikato. We know they can control the weather. They can cause the droughts. They can cause the storms. When I heard about the Napier Hastings flooding a few weeks ago, the first thing I thought is, isn't that typical? That is the fruit and veggie basket of the country. Let's just destroy the crops before they can barely put their little heads above the ground. Now our governments, they know what they're doing. So don't think they're going to be there to help us. Shame on them. So what can we do? Make sure you have enough land that you can plant in. You don't need a lot. You can do raised gardens. I was at a friend's place. They've got a very small property, and they've actually put little raised gardens or cascading gardens along their fence line, and they're growing things in that. Just any little pockets they can. So you don't need a big area. Like me with my Victory Garden in the UK, it's tiny, but I just find the little posies and make it happen. Have a full pantry. Once upon a time, every good housewife was able to have a good full pantry. Women were a vital part of the heart of the home, not just with the love and care, but also the food security, if we're going to use their terminology. And we had full pantries. Well, watch it. Very, very soon they're going to call a full pantry hoarding. And then they're going to start bringing in some laws that you're not allowed to hoard. How uncaring of you that you look after your family. So just think about all that. Think about whether, during the COVID, if one of you have lost your job, whether you just say, actually, I'm going to stay at home now. I did, and I can tell you, I've written in my book 101 Reasons Why you should home educate in the 21st century. And that I did a feasibility study and also explained it's not what you earn, it's what you save. So that's a whole different subject in its own right. But don't get fixed into earning money. You waste a lot of it anyway. Just stand back and say, okay, what about if woman takes initiative at home base? And don't think, oh, I get suburban neurosis. No, of course you won't. Women are out there organizing school classrooms, being paid for it, a job, hotel, motel managers, hospitality industry, bakeries and supermarkets, cafes. They're doing what we used to do at home, what I do at home. But I'm able to do that for my family. And instead of spending money buying it all in, I save money by creating it myself. So don't get hooked into this kind of money thing. Have a full pantry and learn about shelf-stable foods that will last on your shelf for years. Start to think about that. Start to think about survival foods. Start to think about what is growing in my back garden that I can eat. There's several weeds right now growing in my back garden. I'm actually gathering them up and drying them. That's another good way of shelf-stable food once you start drying, preserving your food. Buy local. Now, this is my big thing. Buy local. This centralization of our food is a killer. They started that back in the 1960s here in New Zealand. From what I can figure, it's time to buy local. So find your greengrocer that's got a little shop on the side of the road, or your home kill butcher, or your farmer that's is happy to do that. I know the government are trying to slap down on all that type of thing, but just think about what you can do. Work with some of other people in your community and say, well, look, I'll grow my whole garden, I'll throw in as many potatoes as I can. You throw in carrots, you do whatever. And then you can kind of trade between you to support each other. It's particularly if you've got a small garden. How do we do it all? But don't worry, eat seasonally. Don't worry, oh, I'm not eating potatoes. You might have kumara. You might have taro. You might have Jerusalem artichokes. There are other root vegetables that you can have. So just think about those things. What not to do. Don't rely on the government for all their come hithers. Do not buy into it. He who owns the food or controls the food controls the people. Don't give the government that privileged position, because they'll do you in. They're not interested in us. It's control they're interested in. Do not depend on synthetic foods. I saw a Soylent slogan. Soylent, sounds like something you'd put in your engine, your car engine. And this is their little motto. We thought about food so you wouldn't have to. Actually, thank you, Soylent. I'm cool. I'm fine here. I have a brain. I'm not a sheeple. I can look after myself, and by doing that, I can look after my immediate community. Boycott supermarkets. I still have to pop in. It does me in to do so, but I pretty much stay out of supermarkets. Not interested in them. And do not rely on the food supply chain, because if there is going to be shortages, that's going to impact onto companies that can survive petrol and diesel to fuel the trucks to get the food here, there, and everywhere. It wouldn't take much. Just look what happened with COVID. We went up to Pukekoi just after the first lockdown, and we just saw heaps and heaps and heaps of rotting onions, acres of rotting onions, because our kind Prime Minister decided to shut us down. So their end game, I must stop. Oh, it's nearly half an hour, sorry. Their end game, control, total control. They want to experiment on us, the population. They want to discipline us with our food. If we're not good, they won't send food our way. Happened in Russia, happened in China. Eugenics, they don't mind if some of us die of malnutrition and other diseases. They're herding us to the cities where they can control us better. They're open concentration camps. They want to, their end game is to bring carbon tax in. So wait for that. And they will do this through hunger, through civil unrest, through spiking food costs. It's all going to come, and the breakdown of distribution. And they even, in these scenario games that they played, decided that some governments would be toppled. So they're looking for complete chaos. So, but we can win. We can fight back, and do that by planting our own, starting to learn things now. It's a steep learning curve, but look, everyone's in it together, and we can help each other. Start by getting some herbs, grow them, plant out some of your garden where you can. We can't neglect our agricultural people. We have to support them, because when the government turn on us, our agricultural community will not, because we're going to support them, and they in turn will support us. We want to bypass our corrupt government, and we want to go into lawful rebellion, looking after ourselves. We, the people, we do not consent. We do not consent. So there we go. I'll come down from my high horse, go and have a cup of tea. Thank you very much for joining me this morning, and have a good day on all that. But have a good day. Get excited. I'm learning all sorts of things. A few crop failures, but it's okay. I'm learning how to do things. Next time, you've got to learn by the school of hard knocks. Don't fear it. We've got time. Relax and just start the process. So have a good day, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye for now.